Are you committed to making sure that the troops stay until every American who wants to be out is out?
Yes. And if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
He sounded pretty adamant, didn't he? But 19 months have passed since the president made those comments, and it turns out this was just another lie from the Biden administration. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has now made the following admission before Congress.
American citizens who identify themselves to us who are in Afghanistan, there are about, that we're in contact with, about 175. 44 of them are ready to leave, and we are working to effectuate their departure.
For more on this, it's our pleasure to welcome in Texas Congressman and retired U.S. Navy Master Chief Tony Gonzales. Congressman, before we dive in, we'd like to express our gratitude to you and your fellow lawmakers for your efforts in getting Newsmax back on DirecTV. It was an uphill battle, but you stayed the course, and this wouldn't have been possible without you and others like you. So thank you very much for that.
No, happy to. I'm glad we're back on the air.
Well, Congressman, the botched Afghanistan withdrawal is when all this started to go downhill for Joe Biden. His poll numbers are now the lowest of his presidency. And Antony Blinken's comments yesterday certainly won't help matters, because we were told at the time everyone was out of Afghanistan. So now they're not. So what's the real story here?
Yeah, no, it's one lie after another with the Biden administration. I spent 20 years in the military. I spent 5 years in Afghanistan. And all of our veterans, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, when we see these images, it bothers us. And essentially, the Biden administration, not only did it abandon Americans behind enemy lines, it also got 13 Americans killed that we will never forget. At my office in particular, many of us, we essentially turned into mini State Departments, and we were getting Americans out that way.
Yeah, it was just such a tragic time and such a weak policy that President Biden supported. Let's go back a few weeks and listen to what former President Trump had to say at CPAC about how poorly the Biden administration handled the Afghanistan withdrawal. Take a look.
When he gets out of Afghanistan and takes the soldiers, takes the soldiers out first. $85 billion worth of our equipment that I bought. $85 billion. I said to General Milley, I want every piece of equipment. Sir, I think it would be cheaper to leave it behind, sir. That's when I lost faith. We left in disgrace. It was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, in my opinion.
We left in disgrace. I mean, is President Biden the weakest president we have ever seen when it comes to foreign policy and foreign relations?
I think so. I think President Trump was actually absolutely right when he calls out President Biden and how weak he's been across the globe. And it's dangerous. It certainly has gotten Americans killed in Afghanistan, but you're also seeing the same thing in Ukraine, Taiwan. I recently traveled to Taiwan last month, and you're seeing Xi and the Communist Chinese Party just licking their chops, ready to gobble up Taiwan whole. It's a danger to not only the United States, to the world, when we have a weak presidency. It's time for a change.
Congressman, let's shift gears for a moment to the northern border, because a deal has been reached between the U.S. and Canada to allow both countries to turn away illegal immigrants. Does this agreement, though, make a dent in the current situation we face at the southern border?
No, it doesn't at all. And this is another case where the Biden administration is nowhere to be found on the real crisis. You know, normally a leader, when a crisis happens, you run to the fire, you run to the problem, you work with others to try to solve it. That's not what we're seeing here. The State Department has certainly been absent everywhere. But what about the southern border? I recently visited Mexico City this past weekend, and I sat down. I had a 4-hour conversation with the president of Mexico. And it wasn't necessarily always pleasant. One of the things that I brought up was, one, we have Americans that are missing in Mexico, and many people don't feel safe when they travel there. That has to change. The other is help defeating fentanyl. Fentanyl comes from China. It gets to Mexico and it makes its way to the United States. He agreed to have a conversation with Communist China on preventing the raw materials from entering the country.
So just real quick, where do you think this will end up? Will the Biden administration move quickly in any way or make any change when it comes to dealing with this border crisis?
No, they've shown, Biden administration has shown they're going to fail over and over again. So we shouldn't hold our breath. I'd also say it's time for Congress to lead. Stop pointing fingers. It's time for Congress, a Republican-led Congress, to roll up our sleeves and go to work. To me, that starts by labeling cartels as terrorist organizations.
Absolutely. Doing everything 180 degrees different from the previous administration, and it all spikes. Crime, drugs, human trafficking, child smuggling.
Right. And one of the things that we always understood, Congressman, is that President Trump knew that we had to have border security. That was the primary goal here. I think trying to find that goal between border security and then dealing with illegal immigrants here, it's going to be quite a challenge for Congress.
Absolutely. Congressman Gonzales, thank you so much for your time and for your service. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.